Glowing red eyes, an unmasculine voice, he reads too fast and likes old comic book stories, he edits poorly, he mashes.
What was the strange figure that emerged from the tomb and loomed darkly in the night? Even brave men tremble and stout hearts quail when the vampire prowls. Hello and welcome to this episode of Murder Incorporated. In this issue, we proudly bring you a timeless classic in horror comics called The Vampire Prowls. This comes to us from the pages of Adventures into the Unknown, Issue 3, published as both February and March of 1949. It was published by the B&I Publishing Company. It is a classic and rare. This is an independent production. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, donate, and visit our merchandise store. Every little bit helps. The story begins in the esteemed offices of Junius B. Jethro, M.D. A man is suggesting to him, "You look tired, Doc. Guess the same old routine of colds, fevers, and babies gets monotonous, eh?" Dr. Jethro replies, "Yes, it does. But once in a while, I get a case that's really exciting, like the time I treated the victim of a vampire." "A vampire? But surely, Doctor, you're joking. Such creatures don't exist." The doctor told him, "That's what I thought, until I was summoned to treat Ruth Morton. Ruth was a musical comedy star, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." And so the good doctor begins his gut-wrenching story. For weeks, the doorman of the theater at which she was appearing noticed a strange figure lurking beneath the marquee. "That guy gives me the creeps," the doorman told himself. "Every night, he just stands there and stares at her picture. He don't look human." The stranger was so very captivated by her beauty that he eventually ventured inside. Ruth Morton noticed him as she performed, saying to herself, "I wonder who that horrible-looking man is. He keeps staring at me." After that very show, he paid a visit to her dressing room. Formal wear, long coat, and a dozen expensive red roses. "You," she exclaimed, "the man in the box. What do you want?" He told her, "I couldn't keep away. I've come to tell you of my love." Her reply startled him. "How dare you? I'm happily married and not in the habit of entertaining strange men in my dressing room, particularly repulsive creatures like you. Now please go." He demanded, "Repulsive, am I?" He grabbed her, saying, "You despise me because I am not like other men, but you'll pay for this insult. I'll have my revenge." And she screamed. Help shortly arrived for Ruth Morton. The stage manager and security rushed in. "Grab him! He's getting away!" one said. But the strange man crashed through a window and escaped. And an hour later, as her husband comforted her at their apartment, she asked, "But Bill, he was awful. Suppose he comes after me again?" He soothed her. "Don't worry. He's probably so frightened he won't show his face in this town anymore. Might as well get used to it, honey. You meet all kinds of weird people in show business." "I'm going next door for a minute, Ruth," her husband told her. "Larry Roberts wants me to check a song and dance routine for your next show." "Hurry back," his wife told him. And of course, his leaving was a bad idea. For on the wall outside, the caped stranger was doing a Spider-Man impersonation. "There's her bedroom window," he said. "In a few moments, vengeance will be mine." He slid open the window and crept inside. She turned and saw him and screamed. "I loved you," he yelled, "but you spurned me. I tried to be a mortal man, but it is no use. Now I will have my revenge." She screamed for her husband, "Bill! Bill, help!" Her husband heard her. He was speaking at the front door with the neighbor. He ran to her. "It's Ruth. I'm coming, honey. I'm coming." And when he arrived, "Ruth, what's the matter?" She seemed to have fainted. Moments later, she returned to consciousness to tell her tale. "That horrid creature was after me again. He vanished when you burst into the room." "You're in bad shape, Ruth," he told her. "I'd better call Dr. Jethro." The doctor, Dr. Jethro, made a house call. He came to the couple at their apartment. He found Ruth lying nervously on their sofa and her husband Bill hovering over her anxiously. Her husband asked him, "How is she, Doc?" The doctor didn't seem to believe her story at first. "She'll be all right. She must have fallen asleep at the dressing table and had a nightmare. A good night's sleep, Ruth, and you'll be as fresh as a daisy by morning." When he and her husband were alone, he said, "Just between you and me, Bill, I don't think she was suffering from a nightmare. The prowler had all the earmarks of a vampire." Bill was astonished. "A vampire? Surely, doctor, you're not serious?" Dr. Jethro elaborated. "Of course, science knows that such creatures don't exist, but her every description of the way he looked, his words, his actions, they all check with the classic idea of a vampire." Ruth's husband said, "Merciful heavens, I'll keep careful watch for the rest of the night and call you if anything happens." And in his chair in the dark, as Ruth slept, Bill's careful vigil waned, and he slept. Suddenly, from a shadowy corner of the bedroom, where it had been clinging unseen to a beam in the ceiling, there flits a huge bat. And Ruth again screams out in terror. Bill runs in groggily, waving his small pistol in the direction of the large bat, saying, "A perfect target. I can't miss." The bat then flees. And the sordid, supernatural stranger then reappears in his somewhat human form, hanging outside on the side of the building, whining like a girl. "I'm badly hit, and because of my wounds, I've changed back to my human shape," he grunts. "I can't hold on any longer," he coughs. "I'm losing my grip." And so he falls. The canopy broke his fall, an onlooker observes. "Stand back. Let me through," a member of the Fuzz demands. "Here comes an ambulance from Mercy Hospital," someone else notes. And Dr. Jethro reappears at Ruth's bedside. "She just went to pieces, Doc," her husband tells him. The doctor tells him she's in a state of shock. Better take her to Mercy Hospital immediately. "I'm on the staff there." Ruth is unconscious and in a hospital bed, thong underwear riding up something fiercely. Dr. Jethro is telling her husband, "She's resting comfortably now. You'd better go home and stop worrying. Nothing can happen to her here. Absolutely nothing." Bill replied, "Okay, if you insist." As darkness falls and deathly quiet reigns in the morgue, the vampire rises from his steel slab. For some say a vampire doesn't die like mortals. During the daylight hours, he has lain in a state of suspended animation, resembling death. But with darkness, he rises. Again, the clerk saw him and screams, "It's a ghost! He's coming after me!" The vampire wanders groggily into the hall, telling himself, "I'm weak, confused. If only I could just look at her face again. My instinct tells me she's near." Ruth is waking up too, and talking to herself too. "Where am I? Something's scratching at the window." The vampire busts through the windows, screaming, "I've found you again." Ruth screams again, "Oh no, and help." Dr. Jethro and a nurse storm in. "Great Scott!" Jethro yells. "It's the vampire." "Get out of my way," the vampire orders, rushing past them, out the door. "Stop him," Dr. Jethro demands. "Don't let him get away. Call the police." And security quickly arrived. "He must be somewhere in the hospital. Nobody saw him leave. Is there any place we haven't covered, Doc?" Dr. Jethro considered carefully and then had a thought. That unused storeroom on the top floor. We haven't looked there. Dr. Jethro and two policemen opened the door to that storeroom and found the vampire. "There he is," Jethro yelled. "Let him have it," one of the cops told the other. And they both opened fire, and the vampire laughed. And Jethro said, "Put down your guns. Vampires can be hurt only when they're caught off guard, and bullets can't harm him now. But I have something here that will stop him." "A juniper sprig," Dr. Jethro yells, holding up the totem. "According to legend, it will rout the undead, so let's see how it works on vampires." "No," the vampire begged, lurching away. "No, take it away." The vampire tried to flee. "I've got to get out of here," it screamed. "After him," Jethro commanded. "Don't let him get away." They chased the vampire down halls and stairs. One of the cops pointed as the vampire ran down the street. "There he goes," the cop yelled. Jethro told them, "He's headed for that car." And as they followed in a police car, the driver said, "That's a high-powered job he's stolen. I can't gain on him." Jethro demanded, "Follow him. Don't let him out of our sight." Finally, after several quiet and tense minutes, the vampire pulled to a stop, not knowing he was followed. Into a cemetery on the outskirts of town, he ran, telling himself, "I'm safe. They'll never get me now." The pursuers were hot on his trail, however. "Look," a policeman pointed. Dr. Jethro finished his thought. "That's him. That's the vampire. He has changed into a bat." "He's flying into that tomb," a cop observed. Jethro said, "It all figures out. The undead must return to their coffins before the break of dawn. Let's go." Now, within the tomb, the three look throughout in paranoia, fear, trepidation. "There's nothing in here but this old coffin," the cop with a lantern notes. "Right," Jethro agrees. "The inscription says it's the coffin of a Marvin Sanders, who died in 1854. I'll lift the lid." The cop with the lantern moves closer. The other cop levels his gun. Nervous, someone passes gas. One of the cops says, "Jeepers, it's him. But how could he have died almost 100 years ago?" Jethro replied, "He isn't dead. According to legend, a vampire can't be truly dead until a wooden stake is driven through him. And I've got just the right thing for it here." And a moment later, there is a dull thud as the two cops watch, horrified. Jethro looks up, disgusted and tired. "That's the end of the vampire, gentlemen. He'll trouble us no more. And Ruth Morton will be a mighty happy girl to hear it." And the corpse disintegrated, leaving a perplexed policeman to add, "Well, I'll be. Only an old skeleton left." Much later, the story concludes back in Dr. Jethro's office, where in the first scene he was relaying this tale to a disbelieving friend. Jethro says, "Well, that's my story. Still think a doctor's life is always dull?" "Wow," his friend said, either believing or feigning belief. "Why, it's incredible. I certainly won't be so skeptical after this. Just make believe I never said anything, Doc."